Today, Bitcoin sinks on the final day of September, but still marks a positive month. Former President Donald Trump says eligible people can now sign up for World Liberty Financial, and Bill Barhydt breaks down why Ethereum could face growing competition in the months ahead. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Jordan Smith. Markets in the red this morning. As of noon Eastern, Bitcoin dropped more than 3% and was trading at $63,500. Ether fell more than 2.5% and was trading at the $2,500 mark. And XRP fell 6%, trading at 62 cents. We're closing out the month and the quarter today, and Bitcoin's on pace to gain around 8% in the past 30 days, while Ether rose about 4% in that same time. Both were trending lower to start September, but staged a comeback after those rate cuts here in the US and signs of economic stimulus around the globe, particularly in China. And for Q3, Bitcoin's up about 2%, while Ether's actually down about 24%. Despite that steep decline, Ether has still gained 14% this year, while Bitcoin's up nearly 50%. All right, let's talk about the top stories. Crypto financial services company Swan Bitcoin is suing former employees, alleging they stole the company's Bitcoin mining plans. The filing claims the ex-employees resigned near simultaneously and joined a company under the name Proton, an entity it says was created to use Swan's mining tech and secrets. The lawsuit also alleges that Tether, which is not a defendant in this case, helped the defendants with legal cover. A Tether spokesperson told CNBC that it's aware of the allegations in the lawsuit, but denies any implications of wrongdoing. A day after the court filing, Swan Bitcoin CEO Kristin posted on X boasting the company's revenue and recent launches and said that mining is segregated and that recent news does not affect Swan's core business. Next, Binance founder Changpeng Zhao has shared his first public post as a free man. CZ entered a 4-month prison sentence in California over allowing money laundering under his leadership at Binance and was released on Friday. And on Sunday, he shared an update on X thanking supporters and said he would take some time to figure out next steps. He did provide an update on a few areas of focus, including his educational platform, investing in blockchain, AI, and biotech, charity, and a book he's writing. Now, CZ stepped down from his CEO role at Binance as part of his plea deal in November of last year, and that company has since been under the leadership of Richard Teng. Last, Donald Trump says the crypto project backed by his family, World Liberty Financial, is now open to eligible people. In a post on X, the former president announced the whitelist was open and said that it was, quote, your chance to be part of this historic moment. Now, when you go to World Liberty's website, it asks you to connect a wallet, and World Liberty has claimed that this DeFi platform would work to ensure US dollar dominance and drive mass adoption of dollar-pegged stablecoins, but beyond that, details on this project are still scarce. Now, CNBC reached out to World Liberty and the Trump campaign, but haven't heard back yet. You can check for the latest news on this over at CNBC.com. All right, let's go back to markets for our main story. As we close out September and the third quarter, I spoke with Bill Barhydt of Abra to get his take on crypto's recent rise and his expectations long term. I want to start off with we're ending September. Bitcoin's looking like it's going to be up about 8% for the month. Yeah. Just talk about your reaction to what we've seen, especially this turnaround toward the end of September. Once the Fed decided to cut rates by 50 basis points, we saw this sort of turnaround for the cryptocurrency market. React to September for me.
Sure. I think there's a couple of things going on. First, there was broad consensus that the Fed was going to cut rates, but more importantly, that the liquidity cycle has now started. And by liquidity cycle, I mean that there's kind of a global coordinated effort to push stimulus into the monetary systems across the world. China, Japan, the United States, Western Europe, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, whatever the U.S. does has a much bigger effect on global markets than other countries because the global dominance of the dollar. But many were expecting 25 basis points. Clearly, markets globally have now begun to price in 50 basis points, and the feedback from the Fed that we're going to be getting more stimulus. China announced over the weekend, I believe, that the biggest stimulus probably in 15 years, I think since 2007 or 2008. Traditionally, certain risk on assets, Bitcoin have kind of trailed stimulus and liquidity by maybe 6 to 10 weeks. And so many had priced in 25 basis points and maybe slower stimulus. So maybe there was a little bit of that. But in broad measure, Bitcoin, because it's kind of a fixed float asset, deflationary over time, tends to be more of a levered bet on stimulus, right, and on liquidity. So we would expect over the next several months, Bitcoin to appreciate significantly versus kind of traditional risk on assets, and I would expect It's probably 4 to 6 weeks before the fun really begins.
I want to do that look ahead in just a second, but if I can stick with just the past quarter, actually, I was doing some math before we had this conversation, and it looks like Bitcoin's going to be up about 2% for the past 3 months, while Ether's down 24%. What do you think is behind that spread there that we're seeing, especially because in recent months, it feels like Ether and Bitcoin have been a little more in tandem, and now we're seeing this split?
Yeah, I think what's happening is that there's a competition between L2s and Ethereum and Base from Coinbase, and that's having a negative impact on expectations for revenue generation via the Ethereum network over time as more and more transactions can move to L2. I think the bigger narrative for me is what's happening with second generation L1s. And by that I mean Solana, Sui, Aptos. I'm super bullish on these next generation, what I call L1s. Solana, Fire Dancer is now live. The number of apps being developed on Solana that I saw at the recent conference is astounding. So I think we're basically seeing a narrative shift in the broadest sense possible here. I think that people are looking at the future of AI and the integration of crypto and AI and saying, I don't think this is going to work on these layer twos. And I think that these kind of highly scalable L1s have a better shot, in my humble opinion, so far. At least that's the kind of techie narrative of winning that market. And we'll see how it plays out. But I think that's hurting kind of expectations for Ethereum in the short term, and probably represents significant potential price appreciation for the other L1s as well. Now, I do think that Ethereum is going to go up along with other crypto assets in the next kind of cycle, but its narrative has shifted significantly.
That's a good point. I mean, you're talking about these alternatives to Ethereum that have captured the attention of the market in some capacity. And if I think to Wall Street, I mean, we've had these Bitcoin ETFs, we've had these Ethereum ETFs. Bitcoin did seem to garner some attention. Ethereum ETFs, not so much, but people are already talking about Solana ETFs. And if you're talking about the attention that these L1s are getting from developers, does that translate into a potential ETF if it does get approved?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't really care. I mean, look, what matters to me is where is decentralization headed, and why does decentralization matter? I love the fact that we have free marketing from institutions who want to capture some of the value being created by the decentralization movement, whether it's Bitcoin as digital gold or Ethereum, which I think to the last point is actually going to move more towards the institutional platform for decentralized products, and the others are going to basically be kind of the scalable global platforms for decentralization. And yeah, institutions are fine, and along with everyone else, to capture some of the value created there. But I care way more about what this decentralization movement means long term, what it means for AI, what it means for banking, what it means for freedom, which is mostly money these days, right? Et cetera, et cetera. And in that regards, I'm super bullish, and I think we're on a very healthy track.
So talking about that next evolution of DeFi, of crypto over the next 3 months, we'll say the next quarter, what should people be looking out for? What are the things that you're paying attention to in this market?
So there are three narratives that matter to me right now personally, right? So, and that I track a lot at Abra. The first is Bitcoin as kind of a hedge as sound money, not necessarily a hedge against inflation, but just a hedge against government's policy run amok, right? And I think we're seeing that play out. Larry Fink has woken up institutions to that. But people all over the world in emerging markets, in war zones, in Ukraine, they figured this out on their own. They don't need Larry Fink to tell them that. Number two, I think that there's this kind of convergence coming between crypto, smart contracts, and AI, right? When you think about autonomous agents can't be autonomous if they require a centralized stored value bank account system to process transactions that can be shut off, right? Just like truckers in Canada can have their bank account shut off, right? So crypto and smart contracts is the only way that's going to work. And I believe that it requires a highly scalable, always on, highly available layer one technology to make that happen. And these next generation layer ones are showing great promise. And the last narrative that's interesting to me is gaming and memes, right? So the great thing about gaming and memes is they've acted as a fantastic test bed over the last couple of years to show us that these next generation L1s can scale massively. Basically, millions of people have participated in a global test to show us that using meme tokens and games that we can actually build scalable decentralized systems now, which we couldn't before, right? You couldn't build scalable applications on Ethereum 5 years ago because the transactions would have cost you $15, $20, whereas now they're basically free, right? And so these three things are basically showing us that we can move and migrate toward a truly decentralized internet, which is what the internet was supposed to be all about in the first place.
Final question, real quick. I have to ask about price. We've had a lot of people talk to us about markets and say that they expect Bitcoin to still hit new all-time highs by the end of the year. Are you in that camp? Do you believe that? And does it matter if it does or not?
Well, first of all, I don't give investment advice in general, but in my opinion, one, it doesn't really matter because if you look at the liquidity cycle over the next 18 months to 2 years, we have to refinance the debt at lower rates. If we don't, we're screwed. And so what that means is massive amounts of liquidity has to come into the system to do that. And as a result, I think Bitcoin is going to, skyrocket over the next couple of years. I think the advanced layer ones are also going to skyrocket. And I think Ethereum is going to also appreciate significantly as well. Is it going to happen in December versus March versus next summer? I obviously have no idea, but I do believe it's going to happen.
All right, that's all for Crypto World today. We'll be back again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.